This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. All right, round, hole, square peg, square planet. Brian Burkhart, welcome to The Speaking Show.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are a communications and presentation strategist. Want to hear more about that. But first, paint the picture of the professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and then we'll talk about what that work is.
That is a good, long question. We could take the entire time on that journey, but we won't. To truncate things as quickly as possible, I will tell you that it all really started for me when I was a little guy. I was running for student council president at Oak Ridge Elementary in the 5th grade. My running mate was my good pal, Jim Leonard. I was going to be president. He was going to be the VP. And unlike today with my COVID hair, I was a little wee bit of a guy. I walked up in front of the whole school, up to the lectern, grabbed the gooseneck mic, pulled it all the way down, making a creaking noise all the way to the bottom, and began my journey as a communicator. I remember that moment very clearly, David, and I absolutely remembered, and truly it was one of those very almost surreal experiences, even as a little guy, that I knew right then the power of a great communicator. It changed my life right there. We won the race, and from that point forward, it wasn't athletics or academics or any other thing. It was communication that gave me a chance where others maybe didn't have that chance. I ended up doing things like working at Disney World. I was a game show host for McDonald's Corporation at Hamburger University, their global training facility. I've been part of presentations and meetings and events for, at this point, almost 3 decades. It's all I know.
Now, it's so interesting because, of course, in your book, which is fantastic, Stand for Something, we're doing some pokes and some jabs at McDonald's. And it's like, what is that carrot muffin thing that they're thinking about? So talk about that one story, and I'd love to have that be our entree into, the brand that you want to build, the brand that people can identify with, the brands that people love. But what's the carrot muffin story in your book?
No doubt. I have a very much love with a little bit of hate relationship with McDonald's. They do so much right and good for the world and unfortunately get a lot of blame. But as a marketer, as a brand builder and a communicator, I have struggled for years at the approach that they have taken. The story you're referring to, which is pictured in my book, I took a photo. It was my snap with my iPhone of a humongous billboard in downtown Chicago, which is my hometown and my former home. I now live in Phoenix, Arizona. But this huge billboard showcased the McCarrot muffin. And I don't know about you, but when I think of things like McDonald's and fast food in general, I don't think of McMuffins or carrot muffins. It's just the wrong thing. And my whole point and what my book is all about is that most people and certainly most organizations have no idea what they stand for. They have no clue what they believe. And what I was writing about with that McDonald's story is what I feel is just yet another example of McDonald's throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, from breakfast all day to international flavors to McCarrot muffins. They're gimmicks to try to lure clients and customers in like you and I versus knowing deeply what it is they stand for. If they got that part right, I think they'd see an increase in sales, where here, at least domestically in the US, for years now, they've seen a massive decline in sales.
So that's interesting. As I was reading that part of the book, and by the way, the whole book is just full of these great examples and stories and metaphors, and like you said, actual pictures and illustrations of brands gone right and brands gone wrong. But I was thinking, compare McDonald's and some of their missteps with Starbucks, because Starbucks also continually introducing new products and new flavors because they want to get people back in the store. And McDonald's wants to get people back in the store. But there seems to be a right way to do it. And Starbucks, in my opinion, having not studied this at all, nowhere near the extent that you have, Starbucks tends to get it right because their new products are in alignment with their purpose and with their mission and with their brand. And as you just pointed out, some of these McDonald's, hey, let's throw all kinds of crazy things against the wall and see what sticks. That gets people not to come in the store because people are now confused. Like, why am I going to McDonald's as opposed to why am I going into Starbucks? Are you a big Starbucks fan by any chance?
I will admit that there's not a cup of coffee on the planet that I dislike, but all things being equal, if I could, even with the local roasters, and there's some great ones out here, I actually prefer Starbucks. I am a fan. I think they do a lot right. To your point, the thing that Starbucks has always done, they've made it incredibly clear about carving out this notion of a third place. And whether it's before work, after work, doesn't matter. They've been really clear about creating that sort of identity. It does get a little bit murky. And I understand that, these are publicly traded companies and they've got to achieve a certain level of growth and measure. When you start looking at things like whether it's K-cups that you can get from Starbucks or, alternate products that you can use at home, it does go a touch counter to that argument. But overall, they've been really clear about what it is they stand for.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about kind of the foundational blocking and tackling. That
Sure.
you stand for something also means that you would need to stand against some things, right? So companies with a point of view, companies with a perspective, share a little bit about some of the foundational principles in the book and then how we might apply those to the businesses that we're running.
This is so much fun. I can't tell you how much I appreciate these kind of questions. This is great, David. The reality is that this is all grounded in science. It's something called cognitive psychology theory, and it's long since been true and proven. And really what it tells us is that what we believe as both individuals and certainly as organizations directly leads to what we do. Our beliefs become our actions. The best way I can describe that is, let's say that you and I are going to go out for lunch today, and you're going to be in charge of choosing where we're going to go for lunch. And whether this is true or false, David, just for the sake of example, you hate sushi. Jedi mind trick. You hate it. Awful, slimy, nasty stuff. And so that core belief, that notion that this is terrible food, means that your action is to say, let's go get a pizza, or maybe we'll go out for barbecue, or whatever the heck it is. It won't be sushi. And so that guiding belief leads directly to our actions. That's science. In the world of branding, in the world of business, the reason this is so mission critical, much like our Starbucks and McDonald's discussion, is as consumers, as people who are going to spend money at a variety of different places, we want to know what that other entity stands for and believes in. If we believe divergent things, if we are discordant, it's really unlikely that we will exchange dollars, that we will create a commerce situation or a partnership. This is going to seem a touch blasphemous. People don't want to talk about it, but it's a little bit akin to politics in the US today. Good luck trying to convince someone on the other side, regardless of what side you stand on, trying to convince someone to believe and then do something different. That ain't easy. And it's the same way in corporate America or if the world. But the problem is that most organizations have never taken the time to codify their beliefs. They just do. When you really get clear, when you get absolute clarity about the things you stand for and the things you believe, and then express those really well to the world, you pull in the perfect tribe. You bring in the right exact people. The way I can describe that is the person that walks into REI loves trees and nature. These are not people driving Hummers. You got to know what you believe to find the right people.
You also have a great story in the book about your father-in-law, and that your father-in-law is a different type of man than the kind of man that perhaps you and I are. A little bit pudgy. Maybe we're not going out, maybe the outdoors. There are too many bugs outside. Are you kidding me? I don't want to go outside without getting yourself in any kind of marital trouble. Tell us a little bit about your father-in-law story and how that alignment really came into clear focus on a personal human level.
I'll give you an ad that's not in my book because it's relatively recent. This past Christmas, we went to my wife's little small hometown in Southern Illinois. It's on the banks of the Wabash River, where Illinois, Kentucky, and Indiana can all come together. And her dad is the manliest man on the planet. If there is a machine, he can fix it. He can rebuild it. And I mean, he owns it too. From plane to boat to motorcycle to race car, he has all of them.
And he's in the oil business.
He's in the oil business. He is full man, and I'm soft. I'm a guy who talks and thinks for a living. I'm not him. He's saddled with me as a son-in-law. We were at their place for Christmas, and he had been rebuilding an old pickup truck, like from the 50s. Looked really cool. And he had the hood up, and he was showing me all the stuff. And I didn't know what any of it meant. And so I said something along the lines of, and his name is Mike. I said, Mike, does the radio have Bluetooth? And he just sort of slowly closed the hood and kind of moved on. I got nothing. And to your point, while I have a deep amount of respect and love for my in-laws, my father-in-law very much included, we just struggle when it comes to things like the work that we do, the way we think, the way we act. We're just very, very different. Our beliefs are different. He's been known to hunt. I don't own a gun. He's been known to work on an oil rig. I kind of know how it works, sort of. I mean, he owns them and designs them. And so it's just different. But that's the nature of this belief thing. You got to find out those core beliefs so you can get aligned.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. And then, of course, one of the points that you emphasize in the book is that you genuinely like each other.
For sure.
Because you are totally aligned with who and what you are. He is totally aligned with who and what he is. There's no pretense. There's 100% authenticity on both sides of this relationship so that you actually like each other as people, even though you're very, very different on a foundational basis.
I think that's a very mission critical point. I really do appreciate you bringing that to light here. Just because you can have a very distinct set of beliefs that are divergent certainly doesn't mean you can't get along. It's absolutely important, I think, to know that all of this is done without judgment. I think that's one of those key components to all of this. If you think about that word, politics again, our issue isn't that the ideas or the people are horrible on the surface. What happens is we judge them to be that way. And so we start making assumptions, and one thing leads to another. If you can really try to keep yourself fully divested of the judgment and actually be curious about someone's opposite or differing beliefs, you can find an amazing set of commonalities and ways to make it work and get along.
Totally agree. I want to let people know that you are not only the founder and CEO of Square Planet, but you are a multipreneur. You have a couple of different businesses going on, including an AV company. I want to talk about the AV company here in a moment, but give us the current portfolio of what are the various business interests in which you have your hand.
I have 4. Square Planet is my main business, which is where I'm currently residing. I am socially distanced. I'm all by myself at the office. It's only 10 minutes from my house, so it's kind of great. Square Planet is basically a creative agency. We believe in making waves. Our whole reason for existing is to help elevate our clients' messages. And so that is a lot of content development, a lot of soft things like designing and coaching and helping people really communicate super, super effectively, which is not always easy.
And Brian, how big is your team there?
It depends. Right now, we are much smaller through all this, but typically about 8, 9, 10 people at its zenith.
And some virtual, some on-site, some off-site, et cetera.
Exactly. We have multiple offices, one in Chicago and one here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
And we also have the ability, depends on the project, but we can scale up real quickly. It's very typical. The other main firm that I occupy a good chunk of my time in is my AV company. It's called Alter Ego AV, which is all about the power of transformation. We believe in creating these amazing environments and experiences for people. The meetings industry right now is fully decimated. And so that is a really actually unfortunate and kind of ugly story. I'll tell you, David, that it is scary. When we look at what's next or what's on the horizon, there's a lot of unknowns. It's very questionable. My business partner, also named Brian, we're effectively known as the Bryans. We were just on the phone before I jumped in here with you, lamenting, kind of licking our wounds because it's real. My other kind of next in line is a really cool little brand. It's a company called Mutt Jackson, M-U-T-T, like dogs, also wildly affected. It's a lifestyle brand. It lives at Montrose Dog Beach in Chicago, which is the largest off-leash dog beach in North America. And it's essentially a place for dogs to get first dirty and then come to us to get clean, self-serve dog wash stations. We serve things like Mutsicles, which are little dog ice cream treats. They're spectacular. All kinds of fun branded items, hats, t-shirts, etc. And then my final business is called Solar System Holdings, and it is a real estate holding entity which does things like owns our office, that kind of stuff. So
wow.
I got a lot of moving parts. Plus I teach and I'm on the Forbes Business Council and all kinds of craziness.
So thank you for that background. I wanted to specifically get into the AV business. And the AV business is hotels, conference centers, event planners, conference producers would hire you to make their events awesome.
That's exactly right. The best way for people to get it is think of a concert when you got roadies, the guys in black that roll the cases in and they set it all up and do it and then tear it all down. It's that.
Now, this is where I'm going. We're tracking right along here. That is all great, but you made the strategic decision that your folks are not going to wear all black. They are not going to disappear. They are not going to be the anonymous AV guys and gals doing things in the background. They are going to be wearing bright green, and they are going to be standing out from probably 99.8% of all the other AV vendors, AV suppliers, AV providers, because you want, basically, it's like sign your work. That this is going to be such an amazing experience for that conference producer, for that audience, for that set of speakers, that it's like, who were the guys in the green shirts? They were fantastic. Talk about what that means, that whole green shirt philosophy, and how strategically you and your partner came to that decision, and then what impact pre-COVID that's going to have, and how that positions you really well for the comeback. And I think there will be a comeback. But talk about the strategic decision and what the payoff has been.
It's actually one of my favorite stories or case studies or examples of all of this stuff. We built Alter Ego, that's the name of the company, on that core belief of transformation. And it makes sense. You roll into a big empty ballroom, a box, or a convention center. There's nothing there. We have to transform that space into a business theater environment. And if you think about it from a standpoint of theater, it's lights and sound and stage and all of those elements. And it has to go up in a certain time frame, execute flawlessly, and then you get rid of it. And in most events, there are often things like smaller breakouts. I mean, a typical event for us might be 3,000 people at the Bellagio in Las Vegas with a whole bunch of smaller breakout rooms, and we've got to manage all of those parts. And for anyone that's experienced that, the typical AV person, exactly like David stated, is hiding in the wings. They are in full black. It's called show black. It's intentional. It's theater. They're supposed to not be on stage. That position is left to the content or subject matter expert. However, these are human beings who have a lot on the line. As presenters, we understand that the emotions are riding high. And when so many things are reliant on the technology, that just adds to the fervor, the stuff that we're feeling as presenters. And so when we built Alter Ego, we knew that we wanted to really attack that pain that so many presenters felt. If they had problems with their PowerPoint or their microphone wasn't working or whatever it was, why make it even harder for them to get solutions? Why make them find people who were quite literally built to hide into the shadows? So we did the exact opposite. Transformation. We outfit our guys with the most disgustingly, hideously bright green ridiculousness. I mean, you can't miss them. And so even if there are 3,000 people in breakout rooms everywhere, you stick your head out and you go, right there, that guy in bright green, and immediately there's help on the way. It's a very powerful sign of what transformation, that core belief, are all about. But if you look at it from a presenter standpoint, man, oh man, it's nice to know you've got someone there to help out in a moment's notice.
Yes. It's got both the symbolic and the tactical, practical application.
Absolutely.
Now, part of what you do also, Brian, is you work with folks like some of our listeners, professional speakers, presenters, etc. And on your website at squareplanet.com, you have a pirate's guide to creating amazing presentations. And I'm sure now that we're in this lockdown period that we're experiencing as we're recording this, there's also a bad way to do a virtual presentation. And there's probably some great ways that you're coaching your clients and your executives to make awesome virtual presentations. Talk about that pirate code, if you will, back when we were on live stages, and how does that translate to being a powerful presenter and a powerful storyteller on platforms like webinars, videos, Facebook Lives, etc.?
Absolutely. Number one, the pirate thing came from Steve Jobs. When he created the Mac, as we sort of know it today, he handpicked a group of people to break the mold. He said something along the lines of, why join the Navy when you can be a pirate? And quite literally flew the Jolly Rancher flag in a specific office at Apple's headquarters in California. And that really stuck to me because I have no desire to have our clients and their messages just sort of be one of many. We want things to stand out. And that's where that little notion of pirating comes from. It's not of the nasty, awful kind. It's the fun kind of pirate. And that guide is really chock full of amazing set of resources to help people really, truly, deeply connect with conviction towards whatever given audience. Those two words, connection and conviction. It's not one, it's absolutely both in joint unison to really make for effective communicators. There's a million more things. We have lots of little cheats. Like one of my favorites is this thing that we call KFD, which stands for know, feel, and do. What do you want the audience to know? That's with a K. What do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? If you can answer all three effectively, you're going to have a heck of a presentation. All of those elements are baked into that guide. Download it. It's free. Take it. It's great stuff. The notion of virtual, I'll tell you that I think that this is a bit counter to what many of my colleagues would say. I think the most important details are identical. What you do live and what you do virtually need to be the same. One important difference is eyeline. When you're speaking, David, I'm looking at you on my computer screen. But when I'm speaking to you, I have to look at the lens. When you're on stage or in a conference room or across from someone at a job interview, you look them in the eye. But in a virtual world, that eye is the lens. And so that's a big one for people. I wish I could turn this around and show you, but I have two Post-it notes. They're actually upside down because I've got the glue part on the bottom and I've got two little arrows pointing towards the camera. And on the left one, it says look, and on the right one, it says here. And so it's look here. That matters. And most people, and I mean like 99.999, get this part wrong. They look here when they're speaking. And I'm not looking you in the eye all of a sudden, am I? You've got to look in the lens. The other part is I think people need to remember that presentations, and this has a root word, as in present, happy birthday, Merry Christmas. You're giving a gift. You have to give energy, not take energy. And so it's using all those natural things like volume and cadence and story and example to truly create that energy to keep people engaged. Somehow, some way, people are forgetting that this virtual environment is the same. When you're on stage, you have to do those same things. When you're in a job interview, you have to do those same things. When you write an email, you have to do those same things to truly be effective. So for me, same stuff.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Let me go behind the curtain a little bit into Brian World.
Do you really want to do that? I mean,
well, just a little bit. And it's about the process and the outcome of writing your book. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, I have to write a book and this book is really important and I need to, speak about the topics in the book and book. Your book is really perfectly aligned with your company's message and what you do and kind of where you plug into the universe. It looks easier than it is to kind of capture lightning in a bottle and say, well, how do we work with our clients? And what's our coaching? And what's our presentation philosophy? And what's our branding philosophy? And what stories would tell that the best way? Tell us about how you came to write the book. And then let's also talk about the impact of the book among your client base and your fan base.
I could talk about this all day. The biggest thing I would tell you about this, and for anyone that is perhaps in the middle or beginning the notion of let me write a book, I will gladly tell anyone that listens, I started and stopped about 1,000 times. We had a working title, a working intro, a working cover, I had all these things, and they sat on the shelf for forever. And by that, I mean inside a computer. I had all kinds of disassembled ideas. And ultimately, where things finally got a measure of clarity is when I offered and then started to answer one very simple question. And the question was, how do I breathe? And it's an odd question because if you think about it, we just breathe. I mean, I don't think about it, I just breathe. But I meant that, of course, metaphorically for the work that we do. Started to really look at what do we actually do? How do we do it? How do you breathe? And once that became sort of the focus, man, oh man, do we have some clarity. You started to really see all of the things that you just kind of naturally do. You start seeing the inherent processes. You start seeing the connections and the alignment. And it kind of started to write itself. It was sort of crazy. I did get some help. I will also admit that it helps to have a team of people because it was my first book. I didn't know what I was doing. I did work with an editor publisher who kind of helped to put the right people around me, and building out the proper sequence and the outline, really detailed outline, just made it easy. And I think the last thing to your point, when people read my book, they say, man, it sounds like I'm talking to you, like it's so in my voice. And that was 100% purposeful, to the point of I had conversations with the publisher because there's a few times where I'm a little rough. I take the gloves off on a few people. Oh, well, that's me. And so it's sort of one of those things that I had a lot of clarity around how that storytelling style was going to come out. It was going to be great on one hand and bad on the other. And I'm fine with that. I want to work with people that believe what I believe. How it's impacted things? Well, I mean, in a lot of truly positive ways. You do have to realize that there is ego involved. And I think people get that inherently. But the moment I got an okay review, I was crushed. And then I realized, hey, people are entitled to that opinion, right? Not everyone sees it my way. The truth of the matter is the people that I highlighted in my book, the companies and individuals, were incredibly kind and courageous and excited about it. I had a book launch that had 13, I think it was, different states represented, people flying in. I mean, that was just something. It certainly helped from a standpoint of adding some legitimacy. To have an Amazon bestseller as part of your bio doesn't hurt. But it, by all means, was worth every minute and moment of pain and struggle. And I'm already working on number 2, and I look forward to finishing that sooner than later. No doubt about it.
Hey, that's tremendous. You and I also share a little bit of a peculiarity with the English language because I agree with you that Woonsocket is just a lot of fun to say.
Yes.
Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And we're not going to go into the CVS story, but there's a great story in here about CVS. And, one of the conversational kind of getting to know Brian's personality is, well, CVS, the Woonsocket, Rhode Island headquartered company. By the way, the only reason I threw in that random fact is I've always wanted to write Woonsocket in a book.
I mean, isn't that the greatest city name in the planet?
It really is. Perhaps? It's just so much fun. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well,
I appreciate you finding such a trivial detail. That makes me like you even more.
There you go. There you go. Well, I want to just wrap up here with a couple of points. One is that you make no bones about your core values. So when you go to squareplanet.com and you click on its right main top level menu choice, our beliefs, you have your set of beliefs/values right there in public, front and center. Make no mistake. And that, of course, ties into the whole stand for something mantra. When you so clearly declare what you're for and some things that you're against, I know that our listeners are going, well, that's okay for Brian because Brian's got this multi-million-dollar company, he speaks all over the world, he has these big marquee clients. I'm afraid I'm going to lose business. I'm afraid I'm going to turn some people off if I just blast my values and my beliefs out there in public. I need to keep that private so I don't offend anybody. Why is that wrong-headed thinking?
It is wrong-headed thinking, but it's very understandable. And I struggle with it too. No doubt about it. It comes up regularly. And it's one of those things that I think truly over time becomes more comfortable. I think what I have ultimately realized is that there's plenty of work for everybody. There really is that the sheer volume of opportunity and our ability, the bandwidth that we have to work with everyone It's just flawed. We just can't. And so finding the best kind of fit, the most appropriate kind of client, that really should be the goal. I've had plenty of relationships with clients that are just smooth as butter, easy, easy, easy. And I've had a few that no matter what we do, no matter who we throw at it, no matter how much time we spend on it, no matter what the price is, we just grind because we value and believe very different things. That's counter to your business. It takes you away from the things that you could really be doing to excel and move forward. And so for me, it really came down to just simply having enough experience to say, it'll be okay if I say no or move on from this client. I will find one to replace. As one door closes, another opens. And that's really based on some faith, but actual experience. I have every desire to build and grow and have a bigger, larger dent in the universe, but I won't do it at the expense of my core beliefs. And it really is one of those things that is counterintuitive. If you're struggling with it, that's okay. I get it. But keep trying because it feels great when you get it right.
Oh, amen. Well, Brian, talk about how people can get connected and stay connected to more Brian Burkhart brilliance. We're going to link these up in the show notes directly under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. But where can we send people to connect with you and pick up some fun goodies?
There are, believe it or not, a bunch of Brian Burkharts. So don't do that. Go to squareplanet.com, which is easily remembered as think round earth, squareplanet.com. You can certainly check out my book on Amazon. It's called Stand for Something. I am not great at social media. It's not my thing. I'm not a big Facebook tweet kind of guy. However, I do LinkedIn like crazy. So that's another good spot too.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you for being with us. This was hugely enlightening. And my wish for you, stay orange, my friend.
I like that wish, David. You are a master. I appreciate it. I wish for you and everyone that might be participating in this, stay healthy, stay safe. These are not ideal circumstances for any and all. And so my hope is everyone remains safe and well.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.